Money greases the wheels. There's a lot going through Las Vegas.
You have beauty, riches, intrigue, mystery.
Viva Las Vegas! Viva Las Vegas!
Infamous convicted killer, Margaret Rudin.
Margaret Rudin locked up for about 2 decades. This story is an absolute roller coaster. It's one of those fact is stranger than fiction. After 4 failed marriages, Ron met Margaret Rudin, a millionaire husband.
Bad deal. That's motive, 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 motive.
Ron was shot and killed. We know that. And then the question is, who's behind it?
Margaret Rudin indicted on murder charges. A lot of people thought that Margaret Rudin had to be innocent. Others believe that she basically is the most evil person on the face of this earth. Margaret Rudin, unfazed, stoic, cold.
Killed him for money. Fled the scene.
You spot Margaret Rudin. Call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
Black Widow. That's the persona from the media coverage and the fact that she was charged and convicted of murder.
We find the defendant guilty.
Just out of prison after a 20-year sentence, Margaret Rudin sat down with 2020 to tell her story and talk about how she's still fighting to clear her name.
I am Margaret Rudin Mason. I did not kill Ron. They zeroed in on me.
She's been locked up for the past 20 years for the brutal beheading and murder of her millionaire husband, Ron Rudin.
They had no evidence. They had no witnesses.
Margaret Rudin, dubbed the Black Widow of Las Vegas. Black Widow.
Black Widow.
They stuck the name on me that Black Widow, Black Widow, Black Widow, like I had killed somebody before, or like that I was in the habit. I think that people don't know me. They don't try to know.
Margaret Rudin is a chameleon. She's been a blonde, brunette, and a redhead.
I like change. I'm a Gemini.
She's a chameleon, that definitely.
I like to wear wigs. I like short, I like long, I like curly, I like straight. I don't want to look the same way all the time. Even when I sit in front of your cameras, I may look different. But you're still gonna know it's me.
I'm Greg Mullinex. I'm an attorney here in Fresno, California, and I represent Margaret Rudin. There's so many holes in this case. After going through all this stuff, considering everything, I'm convinced that Margaret Rudin's innocent. She was wrongly convicted.
Even though it's circumstantial, all the evidence pointed to Margaret Rudin. I'm 100% convinced that Margaret was responsible for Ron's death.
It was a mystery, which, quite truthfully, to this day hasn't been solved.
What happened to Ron? We still don't know. 20 years later, they never checked on anyone but me. I want the truth to come out. I have waited a long time.
This story really starts in Las Vegas in the 1960s.
Got a funny feeling this is going to be a long show, boys.
We're talking old school Vegas where Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack held court in the Sands Hotel, and the mob's tentacles ran deep.
Good old times. It was smooth. Everything is nice and smooth. But underneath that river of calmness was a
Point across so you knew, don't screw with us because we will kill you. It's pretty simple.
It was into this risky, freewheeling environment that 30-year-old Ron Rudin landed in Las Vegas in 1960 with big dreams of making his fortune in real estate.
Ron saw great things that could transpire in Las Vegas back then. I love this picture. It's like he's looking at you, saying, hey, I'm Ron Rudin, and I have a lot of plans for my future.
He bought a strip mall, he had his office right there. But in the 80s and the 90s, when the explosion of construction hit in Las Vegas, that is when he started to make his real fortune.
He watched Las Vegas just explode, and he was part of that with his real estate business.
You could make a killing, and that's exactly what Ron Rudin did.
So, this is old Vegas. What was Ron's reputation like around these parts?
Ron's reputation, he had a reputation of being a hard-nosed businessman.
Some people will say that Ron Rudin was unscrupulous, that it was anything at all costs to make money.
He didn't like the glitz and the glitter. Ron Bruden wasn't a casino guy, but he absolutely made a name for himself in Sin City.
He was one of the characters here in Las.
That's what he drove, the black Cadillac.
He wasn't afraid to show off that he had made it. He knew he was on top of the pile.
Women were attracted to Ron Bruden, and a lot of it was because of his lifestyle and his money. And he absolutely loved playing the love game.
In a twinkle, he was very handsome. Not just your average handsome. He really stood out.
And when it came to his marriages, Ron went through wives like a casino dealer goes through packs of cards.
Ron Bruden was married a total of 5 times, and each one of those marriages was its own story.
Ron's first marriage in 1962 to wife Donna lasted less than a year. After about an 8-year hiatus, he gets hitched to his second wife, Carolyn. While their marriage eventually failed, Ron kept a bracelet that she gave him with his name on it in diamonds, and he never took that thing off.
Peggy was Ron's third wife, and this one appeared to be a happy marriage. But behind closed doors, Peggy suffered from severe depression, and that depression would manifest itself in the way of suicide. Peggy put a gun to her own head in the couple's bedroom.
The gun that she used to kill herself with had Ron's fingerprints on it. It raised eyebrows. People thought maybe he killed Peggy.
But there was a full investigation into her death, and it was in fact ruled a suicide.
After getting married and splitting up for a 4th time, this time with White Mason.
Well, I had made a joke to one of my friends that went to our church. I had said to her, the very next husband I have is going to wear cowboy boots, because in Vegas, that means they're macho, and I like macho.
Yeah, that's her southern background.
So one day, she said, there's a guy over there behind us that keeps looking at you, and he's wearing cowboy boots.
Well, she was very smitten with him.
I tell you, I've never met anybody better and slicker and smarter and suaver than he was.
She just seemed like a really sweet person. And then I started hearing, the other stuff.
She didn't really realize what she had gotten into.
When he said to me, quietly, what would you say if I told you I murdered Peggy?
Going to the chapel and we're gonna get married.
I think I fall in love too easily. But I don't regret them.
Gee, I really love you, man.
Margaret would never have a problem finding a husband. It's like Liz Taylor,
I have a thing with men. I want to be needed. I need to be needed. I was born in Memphis. I am the oldest in the family. I have 3 daughters.
Her mother seemed like a really nice, warm person, in contrast with her dad, who I think was a strict religious guy.
We could not wear shorts, wear slacks, cut our hair. You weren't supposed to do anything for pleasure. When Elvis Presley was the rage, he refused to let us watch him on TV because of his gyrations.
She was always traveling and stuff. She went to a bunch of schools, like 10 or 15, something like that.
My father was a barber. He would open a new barber shop, stay there until he got tired of the place, and so we'd move someplace else.
So Margaret settled down and got married.
I was married to Jerry Mason right out of high school.
She had 2 children, Michael and a daughter, Christina. They lived just north of Chicago along Lake Michigan.
I wanted the white picket fence. We had it. They had the dog. They had the swings. They had all the things that I never had.
She really seemed to have a perfect life, a settled life, until she didn't.
My husband had an affair. I went to real estate school, got my license, and found I could make it on my own. So I did.
But for Margaret, it was hardly one and done when it came to marriage. Over the following years, she would quickly marry and divorce 2 more husbands.
I think I'm easy to be married to because I'm a people pleaser. That's why none of the men in my life ever asked me for a divorce. Not one. I always had to bring it up first.
By 1981, Margaret was looking for a fresh start in life, so she moved to Las Vegas, where she got married and split up with husband number 4. But just 4 months after the divorce, she decides to roll the dice again and marry wealthy Vegas realtor Ron Rudin.
There are a total of 8 combined previous marriages, but from the beginning, it looks promising.
The thing that I liked the most about Ron was he had a very dry wit, and he was fun to be around. Did you want to hear he was the best lover I ever had?
They made a dynamic, good-looking couple. By all rights, they should have had a wonderful life.
For Margaret, she says everything darkened when she moved into Ron's house, which was located right behind the strip mall and his office.
She did not know that the house had not been renovated since Peggy's suicide.
One night, he said to me, quietly, "What would you say if I told you I murdered Peggy?" And I kind of caught my breath, and I didn't know what to say, because if I'd have said, "Yes, I want the details," I would have had to have left. I just said, "No, you're not going to relieve your guilt by telling me I don't want to know." He said, "Okay," and we never brought it up again.
From a distance, they look like
It wouldn't be long before Margaret discovers that Ron is having an affair with an IRS agent.
In Margaret's case, she was allegedly having an affair with a man named Yehuda Sharon. He claims to be a former officer in the Mossad, which is Israel's intelligence agency.
We weren't having an affair because I was married. If I hadn't been married, he wasn't my type.
Sharon also denied there was an affair, but the mutual jealousy and suspicion all came to a head one night when Margaret says she overheard Ron talking to a woman that he dated before they got married.
And we got into an argument because the closest to death I was ever going to get, by the look on his face. And I said, "Okay, that's it, I'm out of here." And he said, no, you don't have to go. I promise you nothing like that'll ever happen again.
They went and had some counseling. She got to understand him a little bit better. She loved him. She really didn't want to divorce him.
It was Ron that went back to get Margaret, and people believe that Margaret stayed with Ron because she, at this point, was after his money.
I called him, and he says, "Margaret's diagramming out how she's going to split up all my money." And he says, "I'm really getting nervous." I told him, "You better watch your back."
And to add to Ron's worries, at the time, he was knee-deep in a massive real estate development deal that he was struggling to get financing for.
We're up here at the Lee Canyon property that Ron Rudin owned. It's near Mount Charleston. It's about an hour outside of Las Vegas, about 8,000 feet. And Ron had hoped to make a development up here. And apparently, Ron was expecting an offer on this property.
He had several million invested in this project called the Retreat at Lee Canyon.
Lee Canyon is currently a ski resort, but in the 90s, there were questions raised about how Ron was funding his plans for an RV resort at the location.
Ron, at one point, apparently approached some people that were affiliated with organized crime seeking, money to help develop this place.
Well, he got paranoid. The older he got and the worse he was drinking, and he really started getting paranoid.
Maybe he thought an ominous directive he made about his fortune was about to come true.
Ron almost seemed to predict his fate by putting in his will that if I were to ever die of foul play, look at the people around me who stand to benefit from this fortune.
So that tells you something's not quite right. What would make a man have his attorney draw up a directive that says, in the event that I die under any strange circumstances, my death is to be investigated thoroughly?
I think he was right.
In December of 1994, Margaret Rudin was really excited about a new antique business that her husband Ron helped her set up.
December 17th was Margaret's grand opening of her new antique store. in Ron's strip mall. It was her big opening that weekend.
Ron came because he kind of played host, like, this is my shop, this is my wife. I was excited about it because Ron was happy and being supportive. I thought it was going to all work out and be perfect.
Margaret leaves the grand opening and goes home. She and Ron had a plan to go to a movie, and that didn't work out, so she decides, let's go back to the antique store.
She said she closed the antique store late, very late. She went over to see another tenant and, just to talk and chat.
Margaret claims she went back home at about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Ron's car wasn't there. The burglar alarm wasn't on. And I thought, well, that's strange. I thought, I'm so tired, I'm just going to go to bed. Maybe he did go meet somebody.
Next morning, Ron's employees get to the real estate office, and there's no sign of Ron Rudin.
Uniformly, all his coworkers and friends said he was in the office every morning, 8 a.m., very dependable. The fact he didn't show up was so unusual.
Ron Rudin is one of these guys who tells people where he is at all times. He is never, ever missing. And now he is.
I knew something he was going to be doing that most people didn't know about. He was selling the Lee Canyon property on Wednesday, so I knew that he might want to see it one last time.
The first thing Margaret did on Monday morning when Ron wasn't home is she called her up on the mountain and said, have you seen Ron up there? And Ron used to keep a trailer up here. He would just spend the night in the trailer. And so they searched the whole property, and there was no sign of Ron.
She called all the relatives. She sounded very frightened. And she said, I don't know where Ron is. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's happened to us.
I called missing persons the 19th, and Pop said, call us back when it's been 48 hours.
Ron's coworkers and friends were immediately suspicious of Margaret.
I called in the morning. The secretary says he didn't come in this morning. I says, uh-oh. I turned to my wife. I says, I think Margaret did something to Ron.
And detectives did a cursory search of the shop and the house. At that time, they didn't find anything that would give them, cause to investigate any further. When the detectives talked to her, she didn't seem to be worried about Ron being missing. She seemed to be more concerned about his finances.
The suspicion only grew after investigators learned about that ominous directive that Ron added to his trust.
Ron wrote in his will that if any of his beneficiaries were involved in his death, either directly or indirectly, that they should receive nothing.
The will that if I die a violent death, take extraordinary means to investigate. So certainly there was a lot of motive there for Margaret.
The police think this was about money, and that Margaret was greedy, and she wanted his fortune.
Margaret and the two trustees of Ron's estate were among the beneficiaries. According to Ron's attorney, Ron said Margaret was becoming, quote, vicious and violent. Without naming Margaret specifically, in 1991, Ron executed that secret directive to the trustees. 2 years later, though, things between them seemed to have improved, so Ron increased her share.
Well, he increased it finally, I think it was 60%. And you generally don't give more to people that you're having a problem with.
Because the cops were so focused on Margaret right out of the gate, they may have been overlooking another possible motive in Ron's disappearance. The huge Lee Canyon development project.
Now, this deal that he was working on, he disappeared 2 days before he was due to settle. Well, that's motive.
And so that was one of the theories early on in the case, is that perhaps that dealing, that purchase, was perhaps behind the killing of Ron Rudin.
Ron Rudin is missing for 4 days, and then a huge development.
We heard that they found his Cadillac.
This is the Crazy Horse 2 Gentlemen's Club here in Las Vegas. And the significance of this place is right behind this building is where Ron Rudin's car was found.
Was there anything unusual about the condition of the car when they found it?
Yes, it was backed into space for one thing, and then it was covered with dirt and mud, and like it had been rained on in the dirt. And then inside the vehicle, they found 4 sets of muddy footprints. Ron was very meticulous with his car. He even hired a guy to keep his car clean.
Now, I never believed that Ron had driven the Cadillac to the Topless Club. I always believed that it was placed there by someone that was involved.
There were muddy footprints in the car, and they recovered fingerprints that didn't belong to either Ron or Margaret. It might be an indication that, the car was clean.
Police also find clothing in the trunk. Despite all of these clues, Weeks would then go by, and no more leads.
Have you seen this man? He's Ron Rudin, a 64-year-old realtor well known in Las Vegas.
In January of 1995, the trustees of Ron's estate put out a $25,000 reward for information leading to his whereabouts.
And he was gone. No one ever saw him again. Until he was found.
And a little ways up the hill, they found a bracelet, and it spelled out Ron in like diamonds.
When this happened, oh, it was kind of a big deal.
Okay, here we are about 60 miles southeast of Las Vegas, near Lake Mojave, at a place called Nelson's Landing. And this is where, on January 23rd of 1995, in the middle of the night, some fishermen were walking back up after it started raining, and they walked up in this area.
Well, that was heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking. You know, to think of him that way.
So, Greg, what else was found up there?
Okay, well, Ryan, you're standing by where they found Ron's remains, most of them. And then up here was Ron's gold bracelet. And it was unique because it had his name Ron, R-O-N, spelled out in diamonds.
And that bracelet was Ron Rudin. There it was, Ron, written right on it.
They found the burned out old trunk. There was some belts, metal belts that had wrapped around the trunk.
What we believe is the body in the trunk had been placed there.
Tell a story. The skull, the bracelet, the Cadillac, it's all left there intentionally. You know what? It's an old mob movie. They automatically assume when the spouse is killed, the other spouse is guilty. Of course they should have investigated Margaret, but their total focus should not have been on Margaret.
And that trunk they found at the crime scene, they're convinced it came from Margaret's antique shop.
The trunk did become crucial because humpback trunk at the store.
So I'm thinking about Margaret. She's slim, maybe, 120 pounds.
Right.
In your mind, would it have been possible for her to dump the body here?
I don't think so. I think it would be difficult for a strong man to do it because you're talking about way up there on the hill and then dragging everything down.
I don't think that Margaret could have loaded the body in a trunk by herself. I think there was someone that helped her.
And they come up with her supposed boyfriend, Yehuda Sharon. So what they do is put both of them under surveillance.
The theory was that Margaret shot him while he slept, and that she called Yehuda and asked him to help.
He had rented his van, and he had taken the back seat out. And therefore the theory was that somehow Margaret got Sharon involved in moving the body.
Sharon's story was he was going to go to his part-time job in California. He ended up turning around and coming back to Las Vegas.
When you look at how much mileage Sharon had put on that rented van, could his story that he went partway to California be true, or did he go to Nelson's Landing? Either's possible.
Yeah, Mr. Sharon had an alibi.
He claimed he had nothing to do with it, and his girlfriend at the time told investigators that she was with him the weekend that Ron was reported missing. It all checked out.
There's no proof of Yehuda's involvement in this. He portrayed this as a witch hunt. That they were out to get Margaret, and he got sucked into this.
I have no proof of that. I'm convinced that he had far more knowledge than he let on.
You can see how they looked at things and they tried to fit it in their narrative. Oh, well, she has an antique store. He rented a van. Oh, he must have been involved in it, even though he had an alibi.
Call from a handyman who told a remarkable story.
Augustine Lovato tells investigators how he was hired by Margaret Rudin to clean up their home. That information would actually lead to Augustine Lovato receiving a $25,000 reward. He thought potentially was blood.
When he talked about, he could hear this gurgling. It's a drain. You put it in, it drains out. You can find blood afterwards, fine, but it's not going to be gurgling 4 days later or an hour later.
Well, it's awfully strange that your missing persons detectives were out here and they didn't see any blood. How did Lovato see something that wasn't there however many days before?
She hired Lovato to remodel the bedroom, but Ron was still just a missing person at that time. It wasn't a homicide case.
He tells police that while Ron was missing, Margaret hired him to make some changes in the house.
I wasn't renovating the house. I knew I was going to need a way to make a living if he didn't come back, so that I could support myself. I decided I could open a tea shop that I had already talked to Ron about, and everything in there was going to be antiques that I could sell. I wish I'd have been able to do it. It would have been a success. The trustees had left me with no choice.
They cut off Margaret's money. She was getting a small paycheck from Ron's business. They cut that off.
The trustees named in Ron's will justify it by saying they're simply carrying out Ron's specific directive that no one gets any money who caused his death by violent means.
It was really, really petty. After Ron's disappearance, they immediately took over the trust. By New Year's Eve, they had already cut me out of everything. I no longer had my shop in Ron's property, so they were letting me have a message. They were in control, and they intended to make me penniless, and they succeeded.
There's no forensics that ever puts Margaret.
Piece of physical evidence that investigators desperately need miraculously shown.
It's 1 year after Ron's death, and Margaret is fighting two big battles. One, the trustees of her husband's estate, his $12 million estate, are keeping her from getting any money. Secondly, she's under suspicion for murder.
And she's just being bled dry. I mean, she's got no income. They're trashing her name everywhere.
The newspapers even were saying, first time a murder case is going to be settled in a civil trial against Margaret Rudin.
It was right before she was to testify. From a criminal perspective, we were really looking forward to her testimony. That was going to be very, very telling.
If the trustees can convince the civil courts that she, Margaret, in fact is responsible for the death of her husband, she will not be entitled to any of the $12 million.
Ron trusted me. He wanted me to have a part of the inheritance because each time that he redid his trust, he increased my percentage by 20%. He would not have kept increasing the percentage if he had any doubts about me whatsoever, or if we had a bad marriage. He wouldn't have.
The battle ends up just basically fizzling out. Margaret ends up settling for $600,000. And if you take out the $429,000 that she owes her attorneys, far cry from the millions that she was set to inherit if indeed he had died of natural causes or she wasn't under any suspicion.
This was a very tricky investigation, and the police struggled for a long time to discern exactly how Ron was murdered. And they suspected he'd been shot while he was sleeping, but they never had the murder weapon.
This lake has changed a lot since 1994 when Ron disappeared. And out here is where they found the gun. This is Lake Mead, and this is Pyramid Island. July 21st of 1996. The scuba divers used to have scuba schools here. And so one day, some scuba divers noticed some debris 10 to 15 feet out from the shore. They swam down there and brought it out. And it was a 22 caliber gun with a built-in silencer. And it was wrapped.
Was it two police?
Now here's the thing. The gun sat in police storage for about a year.
It's now 1997, 2 years after the murder of Ron Rudin. There is still no indictment against Margaret. One of the detectives remembers, we need to look at that gun found in Lake Mead.
In the actual crime scene itself.
The problem with that is they can't connect the murder weapon to Margaret. They can't ever put the gun in Margaret's hand.
Doesn't stop investigators from trying to do so. Ron had actually sent a letter to police saying, hey, one of my guns from my gun collection is missing. But what it did do was lead police to believe that it must have been Margaret who took that gun that was then missing.
Ron had left a report with ATF indicating that that gun had turned up missing about the time that he and Margaret had separated.
I think it's a stretch to argue that
he had at least 1,000 guns in there. Thomas machine guns from the 30s, shells that were at angles so you could see every single one of them clearly in view.
Was the firearm recovered at the bottom of Lake Mead that pushed this thing over the edge?
Ron's car found at the Crazy Horse, the trunk found in the desert, the handyman story, none of it was enough to indict Margaret Rudin. But now there's a gun. It's a gun they believe was the one used to kill Ron, taken by Margaret.
Now they have what they've been trying to get for years.
I think with that was the piece that they felt that they needed to go to a grand jury. We found the gun. And then 3 years after the disappearance of Mr. Rudin, Margaret is indicted.
Here comes the interesting part now. They called Margaret's attorney, and they said, hey, guess what? We got a murder warrant for Margaret, and we need her to turn herself in. And the attorney promptly said, I don't know where she is. She's disappeared.
We got no.
Police were flabbergasted.
Sometime toward the end of March of 1997, Margaret finally got fed up with everything. She was running out of money, couldn't get a job because she was the Black Widow of Las Vegas. Well, she left before she was ever indicted, and there's no crime about leaving and going anywhere if you're not under indictment.
Margaret got scared. She could tell it wasn't going in a good direction for her.
At that time, I think I was so ready for a nervous breakdown, I didn't think that far ahead. I just wanted to get out of Vegas.
She went on the lam.
You spot Margaret Rudin. Call our hotline.
She outsmarted all of them. She knew how to stay alive.
And if I told you what happened next, you wouldn't believe it.
They automatically assume when the spouse is killed, the other spouse is guilty. Love makes the world go round, but money greases the wheel.
There's no sign of Ron Rudin.
And he was gone.
Margaret Rudin, dubbed the Black Widow of Las Vegas.
The Nevada Black Widow, they never checked on anyone but me.
You Margaret Rudin. Call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
She had at least 2, if not 3 wigs. And then we came across several IDs.
She went on the lam. She outsmarted all of them.
I mean, how often could you be that lucky?
Margaret just doesn't know that luck is going to run out.
42 years have been the worst trial that I've ever had.
You were wrong doing that.
It's unfair to Mrs. Rudin, Judge.
Listen to me.
They had no evidence. They had no witnesses.
There's no fingerprints, DNA, no forensics.
It was a circus. My right side. Oh, why do you have to go this way? I made a ruling and it sticks.
This was just a travesty of justice, and I was part of that travesty. It's the biggest regret of my life. It really is.
Sometimes what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Sometimes it goes on the run.
Why would you flee if you were innocent?
Guadalajara is a city in western Mexico known for its tequila and its mariachi music. Its historic center is dotted with plazas and beautiful landmarks. In 1997, a middle-aged woman in a dark wig was seen frequenting the old Colonial Plaza. That woman, 1994.
Police instantly zero in on Margaret. They believe they've got a solid case. But it's only after police finally have what they believe to be is the murder weapon are they able to charge Margaret Rudin with murder.
Everything that had gone wrong, the way it was handled by the police and the prosecutors, and I got really scared. I did not feel comfortable anymore because they can do whatever they want to do with somebody's life. I wasn't going to get a chance to prove myself.
She did call me and say they think that I did it. She always said she did not do it. She never admitted that I know of that she was guilty. And she ran.
When Margaret fled, it cemented public opinion, right? People thought she was guilty, right? Why would you flee if you were innocent?
I left for, I thought, a better life than what I had in Vegas. I wanted peace of mind. Mexico, they don't care where you're from. They don't pay attention to you.
Once Margaret ends up in Guadalajara, she finds an apartment in a building with mostly other Americans, and she sort of works into the fabric of the downtown atmosphere of this Mexican city.
I love Mexico. I like their way of life. Nobody knew me. And I thought, this is a good place to live.
Meanwhile, back in the U.S., Margaret may have been gone, but she was not forgotten. She was on the FBI's most wanted list.
This is going to be a true test for Margaret. Rudin, 53 years old, no criminal record. She has to figure out how to survive life on the run.
I don't know how she did it. I really don't.
Well, one would think she had help. Or that she had studied it very, very closely.
One useful tool that Margaret has always possessed is her charm. Men do like her. So what happens next is practically the making of a movie of the week. She meets a guy who claims to be a Spanish bank robber, also on the run.
Oh, it was great. He was a wonderful companion. He was not my boyfriend. He taught me how to be a fugitive. The number one thing is always have a bag packed. Have money, ID, clothes. Make sure you have whatever it is you need the most in that bag.
Margaret becomes this master of disguise, with different aliases, wearing different wigs. She even had colored contacts. But eventually, she decided she was ready to come back to the U.S.
Life on the run's not what it's cracked up to be. Right? It's a tough existence. You want to live in Mexico under an alias, scrapping it out, or will you take your chances coming back to the United States?
I had friends that came to visit me in Mexico, and then they asked me if I wanted to come back and live with them in Phoenix. Once you have children and grandchildren, you cannot go somewhere else and live and act like you're having a normal life.
Margaret has to figure out a way to safely get back to the United States. So once again, she uses her charm and convinces a gentleman who lives in the same apartment building in Guadalajara to help her.
Joe Lundergan was a Boston fireman, retired. Very, very, very needy. He was never my boyfriend. I have never been that desperate in my life. I said, I've decided I'm going back to the States. And he said, I will get you across the border. We got to the border. You're on U.S. territory. And I said, oh, okay, go. You can both go.
Margaret and Joe Lundergan part ways. He heads back home to the Boston area, and she settles into a new life in Phoenix, assuming yet another identity using the name of her friend.
Margaret is in Phoenix. She's gotten herself a room at the YMCA. She once worked in the hotel business, so that's a bit of a resume, and she uses it to get a job at the San Carlos Hotel.
My poor manager, he used to say, if you ever tell me you're going to quit, I'll kill you. And I knew I was going to have to quit at some point.
Margaret was the subject of as high-profile a case as you'll ever get.
What could drive a woman to murder? Love? Sex? Money? Well, for the woman in our next case, you're going to have to answer that question yourself.
And she was repeatedly on America's Most Wanted. And she was the Black Widow, right? This was the label. Where's the Black Widow? Have you seen Margaret Rudin?
You spot Margaret Rudin, call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
Someone that she worked with saw the America's Most Wanted and said, hey, that's Annette. And she called the tip line and the police officers responded.
So the cops showed up at my door and said, somebody thinks you are so-and-so and we need to see your ID. And I had gone the day before and got legit Arizona ID with my picture on it, you know. And they said, let me check it in the computer. Came back and said, nothing there. So they left. I picked up my bag, called a limo service, which we used at the hotel, and I said, would you please pick me up on the side entrance? So the limo took me to where I wanted to go, and I was a fugitive again. It is funny. I mean, how often could you be that lucky?
It's time for another chapter in Margaret's life on the run, and she heads east.
But then a pizza delivery man shows up at Margaret Rudin's door. Is he there to deliver an end to her lucky streak?
Revere, Massachusetts is a community that's just 6 miles north of Boston.
It's a blue-collar community, very diverse, and with USA's oldest beach is Revere Beach.
This area was kind of known as the Boston mob community. But this is where they operated in that general vicinity.
No one asked many questions over here.
Margaret barely makes it out of Phoenix when she hears from a friend that Joe Lundergan needs her help.
And Joe said, I have 2 knee surgeries and he's Mary. And would you ask Margaret if she would come take care of me?
Margaret is able to, in Revere, carve out a new life on the run.
Margaret lived in a kind of a rundown little apartment. You had to walk up 2 or 3 flights of stairs. It was kind of grimy and dirty and dark. It was so different than her life of luxury in Las Vegas.
Her new name is Lee Brown.
The other one was Susan Simmons, and she had at least 2, if not 3 wigs. And she wore them frequently.
You know, it wasn't to be deceptive in any way, it's just my sense of style.
People of Revere, they all liked Margaret, right? She was real popular.
I first met Margaret back in October of '99. I'd do photocopies for her. Then she would bring me in some IDs, and I would laminate them for her. And she was very pleasant, really nice.
I really like Massachusetts. I like the people. They're very honest and sincere and forthright.
Even on the run, for Margaret, there's always time for romance. Turns out Margaret's got a new boyfriend. He's a younger guy who lives in the same building as Margaret, but 1 floor down.
The idea that she is the focus of an international woman hunt.
If you spot Margaret Rudin, call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV.
But then also live a somewhat normal life is uncanny.
But when you're on the lam, it's the little things that get you. One of Margaret's seemingly mundane activities proves to be her undoing. She goes frequently to the Revere post office.
And they got a tip. Hey, this woman looks like the fugitive that's being broadcast on America's Most Wanted.
They got a tip that Margaret Rudin was in fact mailing packages from a Revere post office. So we immediately went over to the post office and showed her a picture. Post office people said, yeah, that's her. That's her, and she lives right over there.
And that's how they found me.
November 5th, 1999. The team got together and decided to position ourselves around here.
They came up with kind of a unique sting operation to pry her out, which was a law enforcement officer posed as a pizza delivery man.
We had Officer Joe Pepe on a Domino's shirt, a Domino's hat. We all went up the stairs, gained peaceful entry, and filed up the stairs to her apartment, which is on the 2nd floor, and proceeded to knock on the door.
When they said, "Pizza man," and I went to Joe's bedroom and I said, "Answer the door."
And as soon as the door opened, we rushed in, and the first person I came to was Mr. Wiggett. I pat him down really quickly, shifted him, and passed him to the next guy.
They came in like gangbusters. They're coming down this narrow hallway, and they're coming in with their guns drawn.
There's a entrance to a bathroom. We open the door, and we see a female in there.
All I did was step back into the door of the bathroom. And immediately, he was a highway patrolman. He was a wonderful young man. He came in, and he said, "Are you Margaret Rudin?" I said, "Of course I am. You know I am."
I said to her, "You know what this is about, Margaret?" She goes, "Yeah, this is about Las Vegas." At that point, she was placed in handcuffs with no issues whatsoever. This would be a good example of how she looked upon her arrest. And then she had all her things scattered all over the room, to include wigs. And then we came across several IDs. She took deliberate, proactive measures to conceal her identity.
People of Revere were absolutely stunned beyond belief when it came out that she was wanted for murder in Las Vegas.
This doesn't jive with the person that I knew. The pleasantness of her, that's not something that you could hide. I don't know, I tend to have my doubts.
Margaret Rudin's run from the law ended in Revere, indicted more than 2 years ago for the 1994 murder of her husband, Las Vegas realtor Ron Rudin.
Now that she's caught, she's the focus of everybody's attention.
Margaret Rudin's fugitive days were over, but not her efforts to escape justice.
And they're bringing her from Massachusetts back to Las Vegas.
It sells papers. It keeps the hoopla going.
This is what Margaret Rudin looked like when corrections officers booked her Sunday morning.
They convict somebody before they're ever setting foot into a courtroom.
And now all this anticipation is building as day one in the courtroom is on the horizon.
You would be relieved, to find out if in fact she really did it. we would find out in court, and we could see it whenever we wanted to.
There's a lot here at stake. Margaret's life is at stake.
But would Margaret's fate hinge on the testimony of a surprising witness for the prosecution? Her own sister.
What did Margaret respond?
She said, "I don't give a..."
When you think of Las Vegas, you think of all that sizzle on the strip. Now it's all moved to the Clark County Courthouse, where Margaret Rudin is about to face trial for murder.
March 2nd, 2001, it is time for the Rudin trial.
Adding to the drama inside the courtroom, this trial would make its way into living rooms across America. It was put on cable television.
Good morning and welcome to Open Court here on Court TV. I think this was the first trial to go gavel to gavel on Court TV.
State of Nevada versus Margaret Rudin. The world is watching as this woman who has been on the run, accused of murder, is now sitting in the defendant's chair.
I did not know the magnitude until trial started.
There's a lot riding on the case, and I remember really feeling the weight of that case. I've never talked about the Margaret Rudin case.
Is that ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
They hand me the file, and I said, this is going to be a tough one.
Mr. Owens?
In opening statements, the prosecution portrays Margaret to the jury as a ruthless, greedy woman who will do anything to get her husband's millions.
The evidence will show at the time of Ronald Rudin's death, Margaret Rudin was a 60% beneficiary of the properties and assets that were in that trust.
And in comes Michael Amador.
All right, Mr. Amador.
In his opening statement, defense attorney Michael Amador raises a lot of eyebrows when he seems more intent on talking about himself rather than his client.
I could be a wonderful, caring father, coaching soccer and basketball and helping kids with homework, doing all those things.
It was hours of rambling and talking about himself.
This is a great day for me. This is a culmination of a career.
The purpose of an opening statement is just to indicate what the evidence is going to tend to show and not go into your personal beliefs and your passion and your soccer dad. I never heard that in an opening statement in my life.
I remember minutes into the opening statement of the defense saying to my co-counsel, "Hey, give me a cigarette, this thing's over, and I don't smoke."
Things started out bad and they went to worse by the first day.
Prosecutors lay out their case that Margaret shot
the place for what?
What type of a scene was this?
Suicide.
And could you tell the jury where that was?
In the bedroom.
In the middle of the trial, this astounding revelation comes to light when the jurors learned that Ron Rudin's third wife, Peggy, had actually shot herself in the head.
Reported to the ATF that the gun went missing from his collection back in 1988, right at the time that Margaret was moving out of the house.
A year in the marriage when they were having the divorce problems.
That gun had turned up missing about the time that he and Margaret had separated, and he believed that she had taken the gun.
If she somehow is so clever that she's kept this gun under lock and key, such that no one knows where it is, she brings it out right to the place where it's found. And that's what you have to believe beyond a reasonable doubt.
One of the major pieces that the state honed in on was aid to Margaret Rudin.
And to help make that connection, the prosecution calls Bruce Honeback. He's an antiques dealer who claimed he sold the trunk to Margaret.
Can you tell me when was that you sold this particular trunk to Margaret Rudin?
At the very beginning of our relationship.
So, late spring, early summer.
Yes, sir.
Of 1994.
Yes, sir.
Investigators always believed that Margaret helped transporting that trunk, and they pointed the finger at her suspected paramour, Yehuda Sharon. In what looks to be a major nail in the proverbial coffin of Margaret's case, Yehuda Sharon is called to the stand as a prosecution witness.
Yehuda, okay, check this out. They told him, we're going to charge you with the same murder that we're charging her with. However, if you flip, we'll give you total immunity. Now, what's up with that?
I received immunity. From what? I have no idea.
Did you kill Ron Rudin?
No, I did not.
Did you help kill Ron Rudin?
No, I did not.
Did you help dispose of his body?
No, I did not.
Did you go up to Nelson's Landing in December of 1994?
No, I did not.
And it still baffles me to this day. How do you give him immunity and you don't know what he's going to testify to?
No charges were ever brought against Sharon.
It turns out that the attempt to get something out of Yehuda Sharon just fizzled. The prosecution now puts a lot of its hopes on the next witness, Margaret's sister Donna.
Why is it that you testify as you have today?
Because it's the truth. Because I felt it's what I had to do.
Donna wasn't my friend. She never had been my friend. She's very difficult, and I don't trust her any further than I can throw her.
Donna testified about how she helped Margaret take financial documents from Ron's desk.
Donna's not finished. She tells the jury that the day after Ron went missing, Margaret said to her, you know, I talked to the police about Ron in the past tense.
I said, I hope that doesn't mean that you know something.
And what did Margaret respond?
She said, I don't give a...
And the surprises and curveballs just keep coming. Early in the trial, Amador drops this bombshell.
The problem here is not a lack of diligence on the part of myself and my staff, but insufficient time to fully prepare the entire case, or the time and the funds to fully investigate and interview all of the witnesses. The issue is Margaret Rudin's right to a fair trial.
Astoundingly, Michael Amador, the defense attorney, asks the judge to declare a mistrial.
I will also be moving to withdraw as attorney of record on behalf of Margaret Rudin.
Michael Amador wasn't who he said he was. One thing that I've learned over the years, you better have a voice because you can't depend on somebody else.
The trial is not a perfect thing. Ms. Rudin has not been denied her rights under the Constitution. Based upon the foregoing, the motion for mistrial is denied.
But the closing act of this three-ring circus of a trial was yet to come. Tom Pitaro takes over as lead defense attorney, and he pulls a stunt that will make jaws drop in the courtroom again.
So after you shoot here, either bang, bang, 1 or 2 times.
Yes.
Bang, bang.
I sort of blew up on that.
I made a ruling and it sticks.
The jury in this case has seen all kinds of craziness, and it's not over yet. Now the defense wants to recreate the actual crime scene in the middle of the courtroom.
So the whole body would have to go this way to get the head now facing the back.
Well, the idea was to demonstrate to the jurors.
Listen to me. You better not start yelling, Mr. Pitaro. I made a ruling and it sticks.
At all. I sort of blew up on that. I said, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. It was a circus.
Well, yeah, you know, he got upset a few times. But that's what he gets paid for.
After over 9 weeks, the prosecution and the defense finally rest in one of the longest trials in Vegas history, sending jurors off to deliberate.
The real nasty, down-and-out fight doesn't happen in the courtroom. The real fight starts in the jury room.
I'm Ron Best. I was the foreman on the Ron Rudin millionaire murder trial.
Ron Best, yeah. Very overbearing, but he was very angry because he actually felt on that first day of deliberation that he'd be home by dinner. According to Ron, this case was a slam dunk. And it really wasn't.
This thing was a slam dunk with a stepladder. I mean, it just was. And when you start adding up who had the means, who had the motive, who had the opportunity to do it, there's only one person. And then we had the lone holdout. She couldn't point to evidence as to why Margaret didn't it.
There's your reasonable doubt. We went through 6 days of deliberation where I was not budging.
The foreman wanted me to dismiss juror number 11 because she was the only holdout. And I said, no, our actions weren't such that she needs to be excused. And if it's going to be a hung jury, so be it.
Ms. Rudin, will you stand up? Have you arrived at a verdict?
Yes, sir, we have.
So it was a packed courtroom. Cameras were rolling. There was a lot of suspense because the jury had been out for quite a while. Oh, it's tense. It was really tense.
I can remember standing up and reading the charges, and then I said on the count 2, murder count, first degree, we find the defendant. And I can remember pausing briefly and symbolically. We find the defendant guilty.
When the verdict was read, you hear somebody sobbing. That was me. Because I caved. And all I could do was look up at Tom Pitaro and Margaret Rudin and mouth, I'm sorry. I'm very ashamed of myself that I let that happen. It's the biggest regret of my life. It really is.
When they came back saying, guilty of all counts. I was surprised. I was surprised at that. You know, juror number 11 should have stuck to her guns.
When she came out guilty, we were all relieved, that she was going to go to prison.
Margaret Rudin was looking at me when I said guilty, because I know she did it, and she didn't even blink.
It was a blackout. It's sort of like when the cops came to tell me about Ron, and then your mind goes, I can't take anymore. I don't know how to take it.
The court sentences you to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole.
None of this ever had to happen. What no one really knew at the time, except for a handful of people, was that Margaret Rudin was offered plea deals multiple times.
There had been so many issues with regards to the trial itself that we were concerned about, what would happen with appeals.
They, being the prosecution, were going to give her credit for time served.
I think I even told her, I said, so you do it a year and a half, and you'd be out of custody. She didn't hesitate one bit. Oh, no, Judge, I'm innocent. I'm not taking any deal. I can't plead to something I didn't do.
5 times I was offered a plea deal. I never considered, I'm not going to admit it. I don't care if I'm 110 and I'm still waiting. I'm not going to admit to something I didn't do.
And that takes a lot of chutzpah.
Even afterwards, one of the prosecutors came up to me and said, let's still give it to you.
Dumbfounded that she rejected the offer.
Okay, then. Maybe she is innocent. Wow, Margaret. I honestly don't know what to say to that. I really don't. That's unbelievable.
She went out to the Florence McClure prison out in the Smiley Road. It's on the outskirts of Las Vegas.
Smiley Road. Who would put a women's prison on Smiley Road? What a sense of humor.
She wasn't being broken by the system. She had the belief that she was going to get through it.
It hardens you. The only way you can bear a lot of the things is you have to only think about what's good still.
One person who reached out to Margaret in prison was holdout juror Corinne Kovacs. She had befriended and written Margaret during her long prison stint.
The catalyst for me was I needed to personally apologize to this woman for what I felt was my fault. The travesty was my fault.
As the years went by, there were lingering questions of whether or not she actually got a fair trial.
This was a show. I mean, it was just terrible. And could she receive a fair trial? Yeah, she could receive a fair trial and better defense counsel, but what do you do?
42 years. That is the worst trial that I've ever had. The only regret I have, should I have allowed a mistrial in the very beginning because of Mike Amador? We might have had a different outcome for Margaret Rudin.
But now, 20 years after her conviction, could unsolved mysteries about Ron Rudin's death finally lead to Margaret's name being cleared?
There was 4 sets of footprints, muddy footprints in the car. They never established whose footprints they are. There's all sorts of questions, and who are the 4 people in that car?
This case is still pending. I don't know if you know that. Tune in for the next chapter.
She wants to prove she did not do it. Wow.
Even behind bars, Margaret Rudin was insistent she was innocent. She files an appeal to have her conviction.
And she said, yeah, with ineffectiveness as the counsel, I'm going to grant this and grant a new trial. Well, there you go.
But then 2 years later, the Nevada Supreme Court reversed that decision over a legal technicality.
I was just looking at the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals website and saw one that involved a murder in Las Vegas, and I thought, well, that looks kind of interesting. I just started getting mad, and I started reading it over again because I couldn't believe it. So I went out there and met her, and then I agreed to represent her if she got a new trial.
There's no fingerprints, DNA, no forensics that puts her at the crime scene. She's not stupid enough to kill Ron Rudin in the bedroom of their home, put him in a trunk from her antique store, haul him out and burn him and leave him.
I would really like to be able to exonerate my name. Yes, I have the energy to sit through another trial. Innocent. I would be proven innocent.
Margaret appealed again, and the case is currently pending, waiting for a federal judge to make a ruling on whether she trial.
Why are you convinced that she didn't do it?
Because the physical evidence just doesn't add up. They didn't have a strong enough lead defense attorney to challenge all the evidence that was admitted.
Margaret had taken the gun and used it to kill him.
She had an opportunity to take the weapon in '88, and she probably just kept possession of it for all those years.
Or taken by person or persons unknown during my wife's packing her furniture and person.
He sold the trunk to Margaret.
You tell me, when was it you sold this particular trunk to Margaret Rudin?
Right at the very beginning of at the very beginning of our relationship.
So here we got a guy that supposedly sold her the trunk. To me, that was one of the bigger factors in the conviction.
It turns out the guy who originally sold the witness that trunk came.
Like with carry roller skates in. He said, "That's it." And I said, "Bruce, that little case is too small to put a cadaver in."
But the jury didn't hear from that man until after the defense had rested. Mullinax contends by that time what he had to say was ineffective.
We didn't know it at the time. That's where the problems were. We were finding facts out as they were coming, and as an attorney, you know the facts, and you're able to defend against them. Quite truthfully, if we had that testimony at bit, they never would have spent all the time talking about trunks.
Mysteries surrounding Ron's murder that remain unanswered a quarter of a century later, including the riddle of what was found inside Ron Rudin's abandoned Cadillac.
There was 4 sets of footprints, muddy footprints in the car. They never established whose footprints they are. They also found clothes in the trunk of the car. Those clothes were never tested for DNA. Instead of
Still gotta have the proof somewhere. Bring it out. Let's have it under DNA standards today.
Even former prosecutor Gary Guyman says that there were investigative avenues that weren't fully pursued. Like that huge Lee Canyon real estate deal Rudin was working on that was set to close just days after he went missing.
Yeah, I always believed there was fodder in the Lee Canyon business dealings, but it never got developed. And there's just seems like there's so much left in the process.
He was involved with some very wide assortment of not so nice people. And when they found a body out there at the lake, I mean, for me, that just kind of has mob written all over it.
I just hope that the court in Las Vegas would order a new trial and that this matter could be settled. The chances, I don't know. It's up to a judge right now.
Okay, but this is Vegas. Would you say the odds are in your favor?
I would say the odds should be in our favor because, remember, Margaret was granted a new trial back in 2008.
Infamous convicted killer Margaret Rudin, dubbed the Black Widow of Las Vegas, has just been let out of prison.
Margaret Rudin's life is about to change drastically. What lies ahead does not involve handcuffs, bars, or prison guards.
Oh my God, more than one time did I say to her on the phone, "You're gonna get out, and the day you are, I'm gonna be there."
Juror Corinne Kovacs. She had befriended and written Margaret during her long prison stint.
Wow.
Hi. Am I going to get to see you later?
That was wonderful. It was high time, but you could see that being in prison took a toll. Because this was she's a very pretty woman.
After her release, Margaret moved back to the Chicago area. Now she's 77 years old.
The world had changed. Life had changed. My children had changed. I'm living alone for the first time, probably in my life. It's a serious adjustment. I knew nothing about Facebook, or smartphones, or computers, or the way of life that's just so taken for granted now.
She's a great-grandmother now. She's spending time with her daughter, her granddaughter, great-granddaughters.
And now if I had my life to live over again, I would stay right here in Illinois and never, ever have subjected my kids or myself to Vegas, all of the things that influenced my life as I got into the relationship with Ron Rudin. I miss him. I look at the pictures now. I think I wish he was here.
I wish I had more pictures with my husband.
I think because of the details of the murder, how heinous it was, and because it was motivated by money, by greed, that personally I think she should have stayed behind bars.
I did not kill Ron. And I have no fear of meeting God and saying, I did not. I'm not going to have my children or my grandchildren live with that. Look at her. Her mother did it. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you think. Nina.
Every day, shocking acts are caught on camera.
Stop it! Why are you naked?
But these lawless individuals leave nothing to the imagination.
This dude is butt naked.
It's like they got the pants on.
On this episode, a terrifying home invasion.
My house. When the person said, "This is my house," that made everything even more traumatized.
A pizzeria is robbed in the middle of the night.
They see the suspect inside the establishment, naked, slamming the cash register drawer to the floor.
A woman leaving her house gets the scare of her life.
In that moment, it's either fight or flight.
And a dramatic school drop-off both dad and daughter will never forget.
Oh my God, there's a naked man running down the street.
You wonder what's he gonna do?
Holy.
Nestled in the Santa Monica Mountains, Bel Air is an affluent Southern California zip code.
It is Beverly Hills adjacent. It is dotted with huge mansions, giant landscapes, and even bigger security at all the homes that line the streets. It's not the type of community that you associate with high crime.
Which makes what happens at Matt Saab's secluded home even more shocking.
It was a Thursday, man. I was staying home. I took a day off. I went for a run, and my wife took the kids to their grandma's house. I came after my run. I went upstairs. I was in the shower when I heard the security camera going off. I thought my wife was home early, so I didn't pay attention.
At the same time, Matt's wife Monica receives an alert on her phone from their home security system. Cameras around the entire house are being triggered.
She just looked to see, is the delivery guy, who is it? And she saw a naked man outside. I go out of the shower, I hear a lot of noise downstairs. Again, I think it's my wife and the kids are home. I mean, you don't think an intruder just came to your house?
Don't even touch the house. Stay in the house. I saw the camera. On the driveway? Where someone? Inside our house.
He went to my gym bag and put on my shorts. He put on my shoes. He hears someone upstairs. It was me talking to my wife. He comes toward the noise. You're shocked that you think maybe someone came into the wrong house? I mean, it happens. I mean, maybe the person just came to the wrong house.
Hey, what are you doing here? My house. What are you doing here? I'm gonna call the police right now. Get out of the house.
When the person said, "This is my house," that made everything even more traumatizing to begin with.
And the guy isn't stopping. Slowly, he's heading up to him.
Right away, I knew something was not right, and I knew the best idea is not to engage. So I calmly walked away, closed the door.
Clearly, he's dealing with someone who's probably very dangerous, and the homeowner understands his limitations.
There was no lock on the door, so I'm using my body to hold the door. There's a part of his thinking that if this is going to push, what's going to happen? I'm going to go in a wrestling match. So after 1 minute, when I didn't see him pushing the door, I thought, he's not here yet. Let's just run.
In that moment, it's either fight or flight. The homeowner has to climb down from his balcony, jumps off the balcony onto the hood of his car, only wearing his underwear.
I was literally on the phone telling the officer, the 911 operator, that I am escaping my house.
While Matt makes his escape, the intruder continues to make himself at home. A reality not lost on Monica, who's still watching from afar.
Get the out! Now!
What?
Get out! I'll call the police! Get out!
There's speakers on the security camera, so my wife was telling the intruder, "What are you doing in our house? Get out!"
Get the out! Now!
I would have tried to do the same thing as she did. You want to try to show anger and force.
Get out!
Huh?
Hopefully, you trigger some sort of reaction to get them out of there, but nothing is working with this guy. Nothing.
Daringly, Saab has escaped his Bel Air home, but in the process, a naked man with unknown intentions is still inside.
As I'm calling 911, I also call the security, the private security that we have. They decide that, hey, let's not stay here. So I climb on the balcony to my car. I jumped out. I'm barefooted. So now what is this guy going to do? Is he just going to steal stuff? Because he didn't go through my wallet. I was worried that he set the whole house on fire.
After 20 agonizing minutes, the community's private security detail arrives.
When he saw the gun, he respected the gun. He got down, and then they handcuffed him. And once I got in the house, I tried to talk to him.
What do you want to have? What's your name? What's your name?
He didn't say a word to me.
With the naked perp in handcuffs, Matt decides to check his 29 security cameras to learn what transpired during his shower.
This particular burglar was able to gain entry into the residence by entering an unlocked vehicle, and he was able to use this garage door remote control to enter the residence.
And it's the dining room camera that captures something so horrifying. It provides a hint to Matt and his wife how dangerous this man really was.
Most things we realized after everything was gone, because you have so many cameras. Hold on. And then you find the birds.
These were beloved pets. They cherished these birds. They had 2 children. This was their pets. Watching this scene unfold churns my stomach.
After being taken into custody by Los Angeles police, the intruder is identified as 34-year-old Paul Keon, a transient.
This is certainly an example of the homeowner using the security system the way that it was meant to be used. It was very important that not only did the alarm alert the wife who wasn't home so that she could notify her husband who was in that home with the crazed individual, but that he had the presence of mind to leave and then call authorities and let them come in and deal with him.
When we remodeled this house, we built a balcony with doors. And of course the wife was kind of against that, and I always made a joke that, hey, if something happens, we need to run away, we need to escape. I can't escape from the balcony. But once I could tell my wife I was right, it was a good idea to build the balcony.
In January 2022, Paul Keon is found guilty on burglary and animal cruelty charges and is sentenced to 2 years in state prison.
It just made this whole thing weird. I mean, someone new coming to our driveway. I mean, this whole thing, yeah, because there's so many questions even today. How'd you end up in Bel Air? How'd you end up in a hillside? At one point, did he get naked? Why did he get naked? It's just still puzzling.
I would describe Oakville as a sleepy bedroom community. A lot of people work in Toronto and come out here. It's very quiet.
Scott McKinnon and his daughter Lola have a routine during the school year. Every morning, they wake up, get dressed, and head outside to their car.
I take Lola to school around 8 o'clock in the morning every day. A lot of times we talk about music and bands. Lola's a big fan.
I remember that morning I took a picture of the sky because there's this rhyme that goes, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning, red sky at night, sailors delight. Should have taken warning.
As they approach a busy intersection just 2 blocks from Lola's school, they hear sirens. Instinctively, Lola pulls out her phone and starts filming.
Lola was like Wyatt Earp. She, in one move, just pulled it out and was filming.
I saw this guy and I was like, oh my god, there's a naked man running down the street. Holy.
It's weird. It's freaky. Like, you just can't process why that guy's there at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my god. What is that guy's problem? I hope the cops get him.
The McKinnon's initial shock quickly turns to concern.
If he's willing to run fully naked down a main street that's got to be full of rocks and broken glass, you wonder what's he going to do? And he was running right by our car.
I did check to see if the doors were locked. There started off 1 or 2 cop cars at the scene.
There was 8 or 10 police cars by the end of it.
That's one of the most exciting things I've ever seen.
These officers eventually catch up with this individual who's been running and are able to gain control and get this individual into handcuffs. And so, thankfully, the officers didn't cause any great injury to the individual. The individual didn't run out into traffic and get hurt by oncoming traffic.
I suggested maybe a husband came home and this guy was with his wife or his girlfriend or something. We didn't know.
The situation is even more dangerous than the McKinnons realize.
Just blocks away from where this occurred, the suspect assaulted a homeowner, stabbed him, then took off all their clothes, jumped out of the window of the house, and then took off running.
Once Lola and I found out that this guy actually had assaulted someone, it did put a little different spin on our incident.
It was just kind of like shocking.
Thankfully, the officers were able to apprehend this guy because he could have hurt and assaulted someone else, he could have carjacked someone, he could have done a multitude of things.
The suspect, who hasn't been named publicly by Halton Regional Police, is charged with mischief under $5,000, assault causing bodily harm, and assault with a weapon.
Never even seen anyone get arrested before, so that was definitely like, oh, that's an
You got
extreme.
a naked guy.
I got a naked guy. The guy's running naked. Holy! Dad, I feel like after this experience, we're definitely trauma bonded in a way I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I agree.
That's one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. Wow, that's a story to tell.
Slice Pizza in Towson is going to give you a free pizza pie for the rest of your life if you can identify a naked burglar.
This perpetrator, he's trying to shield his identity by putting his clothing over his head.
Honestly, thought I was dead. I was gonna die that night.
She's trying to make her escape. Hopefully this is coming to an end, but really it's not.
Slice Pizza in Towson is going to give you a free pizza pie for the rest of your life if you can identify a naked burglar.
It's 8 a.m. at family-owned Slice Pizza, and Yanni Rizas arrives to open up for business as usual.
They get to their pizzeria and they can see that their door has been broken into and that inside the establishment it's been ransacked. Thankfully, the perpetrator is not there. Wanting to understand what happened, the business owner decides to sit down and take a look at their security footage. They see the suspect inside the establishment, rummaging through the business, locating the cash register, slamming the cash register drawer to the floor, and he's naked.
While putting the ransacked restaurant back together, the owner realizes how the burglar ended up in the buff.
They come in from the roof, his pants got stuck in the ductwork, so he had to climb out of those, and he actually fell into Slice. So I guess he was going commando because he was running around naked in the back.
He realizes the burglar had come in through the heating vent. And as he lands on the floor with no pants, so what does he do? He decides to be consistent. He takes off the rest of his clothes. Why? Who the heck knows?
This perpetrator was thinking that he could be surveilled because he's trying to shield his identity by putting his clothing over his head. The suspect takes a little bit of cash and some checks and then he leaves.
With footage of the perpetrator, the restaurant owner contacts police in hopes he can be quickly apprehended.
The business owner doesn't just have the security footage, he tells them about a suspicious car that was lurking in the alleyway.
The business owners offer a reward. Anyone who can provide information that will lead to the identity of the suspect is promised pizza for the rest of their life.
Unfortunately, a lifetime of cheesy goodness fails to entice anyone to come forward with information. But a few days later, police get a break when the suspect tries to make his naked gambit pay off.
He takes one of the stolen checks to the same bank that the business owner uses and tries to cash it. So this provides a great link for law enforcement because the bank video footage shows the same vehicle that was mentioned by the business owner. So the perpetrator just keeps going to places with cameras to commit his crimes.
Police link the car to 23-year-old Jonathan Newman, and it's his nakedness that unrobes his anonymity.
I think what the perpetrator didn't think about was all the identifying marks on his body in the form of tattoos. If you're going to commit a crime like this, don't have so much ink.
11 days after the burglary, police locate Newman in a surprising place.
What was ironic is that police officers located the suspect behind the pizza establishment where he had committed the crime about a week later.
Jonathan Newman is charged with 2nd and 4th degree burglary, malicious destruction of property, theft, and forgery. He pleads guilty and is sentenced to 10 years in prison, with all but 3 years suspended.
Initially, the business owner offered free pizza for life for anybody that helped capture this guy. But when the police did it, he went ahead and offered the police free pizza for a month. I would have been in that place every day.
incredible video of a naked man on a rampage in Orange County. I can't imagine being this woman. I would be trying to figure out, what is he doing? An incredible video of a naked man on a rampage in Orange County.
That man stripped off all of his clothes in this field behind me, then he jumped over the fence.
It was a naked rampage unlike anything we've ever seen before.
It's shortly before midnight when Clarissa Vidrio leaves her home and enters her complex's parking lot. Like most nights, she is off to her shift as an overnight security guard.
As she enters her car, all of a sudden, there's a commotion in the stall immediately adjacent to hers.
Here comes a completely nude man, full sprint, who launches himself into the rear window of a minivan.
I can't imagine being this woman. I would probably freeze for several minutes. I would be trying to figure out, who is this guy? He doesn't belong here. He doesn't live here. What is he doing?
He did it with sufficient enough force to break the glass, knock himself down, but then he gets right up. And he just shakes it off. So obviously he's impervious to any feeling of real pain. And so at this point, he's a very, very dangerous individual.
She's trying to make her escape. She's in her car. She's thinking, hopefully this is coming to an end. But really not. Because he then jumps right on the top of her car. The fact that the suspect could even get up after this incident is incredible in and of itself. But then to pick a new target and jump under her car, it's insane.
He's holding on to the hood of the car. She starts turning to the left and turning to the right, and then she accidentally hits the very car that the guy had just gone headfirst into. And although he is finally dislodged from her car, she unfortunately then crashes her car again into another wall at the apartment complex.
Going through that rearview window and then jumping on the car as the female resident is trying to flee and then being flung off of it, all the while he's naked. I'm sure there are injuries to his body that he probably is going to regret did any of that stuff.
The other residents in this apartment complex hear this commotion and they come out just to see what the hell is going on in the garage. And the residents start calling 911. They're approaching him to render aid, and he suddenly just gets up like nothing happened and starts running.
The suspect is apprehended a mile away. He is identified as 21-year-old Garrett Smith. He's charged with being under the influence, vandalism, and resisting arrest.
What this female resident did is appropriate for the circumstances. I would tell my wife to do the same thing. Get there as quickly as possible, any way that you can.
Honestly, thought I was dead. I was gonna die that night.
You might laugh and think it's funny how the guy just gets up, falls down, gets up, fall down. But there's also someone else in this story, the woman who felt like she was held hostage in that car while this was happening.
Clarissa attests to this on the local news.
It's hard for me to come outside at night the way I used to. I need someone to come with me.
This doesn't last for one night. This is something that lasts a lifetime.
This season on Exposed, naked crimes.
Drop the sword! Drop it!
Nude and unpredictable criminals.
Put your hands up! Put your hands up!
Dangerously out of control.
There's an intruder in my house. He's naked. Get the out of here, Joe!
All of a sudden, there's a naked man beating people up.
Call the police! Call the police!
He's really amped up. He's acting very aggressive, and all the while, he's naked.
Swear to God, white dude, naked as a jaybird, on an ATV.
The naked man sitting on the back of the fire truck, Randy Travis.
This is a country superstar, an idol. And did I mention he's naked?
You're at the man by tomorrow.
Clearly nothing is going to stop him from getting in there.
Get back here now. Get back! Get back!
It's something out of a movie.
My father was a tireless advocate for the law. He was a criminal prosecutor,
Some say ruthless, others say righteous. Yeah, cut from the same cloth. I can't really remember who I was before I became a cop. It's my job to make bad things happen to bad people.
It's like someone took my heart and tore it right out of my chest. Why has God forsaken our family?
She may have known who it was.
I want to have my baby back.
What started as a night of babysitting turned into a night of horror for one family.
There was another young London woman murdered, and still they're looking for her killer.
It's just like that life was drained right out of us when we heard that it was her.
Lost a sister. Lost my best friend. We got cheated on seeing her get married, giving birth.
We're all broken. We're all broken and doing the best we could.
They raped her, they beat her. This man strangled her, stared into her face and watched her life, watched her life slip away. What kind of an animal does this?
That's a nice picture. Was this for what, her high school graduation?
Yeah. Yes. This picture was taken
3 days before she was murdered,
Was
October
it?
3rd.
Okay.
Her whole face lit up when she smiled.
We were very, very close. We were always doing things, going to the beach. Things were good. Last thing I remember is watching her walk across the 50 yards away.
At 11 o'clock that night, she came out of the apartment building and she blew me a kiss and I blew her a kiss back. And that's the last time I saw Donna alive.
This is the stuff of nightmares that, babysitters being stalked in the night and murdered. And this is every parent's worst nightmare.
People say, Carol, you should be over it.
No.
You can't. I want to hold her, I want to hug her again. I can't take the hurt. I can't take
We would like your permission to take this case on.
You have my permission 150%.
Mine too.
If there's people out there who know something or were involved, they'll be outed.
Their expectations are so high and so much hope is resting on this. It's kind of like you could see them light up. You are my hope.
There's a lot of collective trauma in this family, but seldom do I see, so many decades later, the type of raw emotion and palpable anger. This is a family that epitomizes what this initiative is about. I've been a cop and a professor of criminology for years, and I've used that experience to assemble a squad of civilian subject matter experts. They must approach each case completely unbiased, to not box themselves into conventional thinking, to bring fresh eyes and new technologies to the table. Their job, and mine, is to investigate the coldest of cold cases, the murders that time forgot. Donna Jean Alcock. Original file number 83-125. This was the 125th murder in rural Ontario in 1983. On October 12, 1983, Donna Jean Alcock was 17 years old. Approximately 6 p.m., she leaves her apartment here to go babysitting in the next building north. She's babysitting for a woman named Michelle who was going out to a local tavern that night. Approximately 1 a.m. now on October 13th, Michelle is driven home by a man she met at a local bar. She tells this man, wait in the car until I send the babysitter home, then you can come in. Michelle goes in, tells Donna Jean she can leave, but first gives her some money and says, can you please go to the nearby variety store and buy me a pack of cigarettes before you go home? The store is located in a commercial plaza just south of the apartment complex. By 2:30 a.m., Donna Jean never returned. Michelle goes to the store herself, and the clerk confirms, as he did later with police, that Donna Jean did in fact show up to buy the cigarettes, but that she looked terrified. The deposition is that she looked as though she'd been crying. The next morning, at 9 a.m., Carol wakes up and finds that Donna Jean never came home, so she calls the police. The next afternoon, October 14th, two boys, searching a nearby ravine, discover the remains of what was suspected to be Donna Jean. When police finally arrive, they confirm that this is in fact Donna Jean's body. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled with an orange plastic bag shoved down her throat, still protruding from her mouth when she was found.
It was heartbreaking to hear the facts. It was done in such a vicious way.
An innocent young girl type of thing with her whole life to look forward to, and gone. Just like that.
As the squad digs into this case, they're going to very quickly find themselves in uncharted territory. And any civilian squad that undertakes such a massive task as this is bound to only be as strong as its weakest link. So they all need to rise to the occasion and demonstrate the same confidence that got them here in the first place. Where do we go from here? This is a sex crime.
DNA.
There is DNA.
And has this DNA already been entered into the CODIS database?
It is in the CODIS database. CODIS is an acronym that stands for Combined DNA Index System. That system has two components: crime scene samples on one hand, convicted offender samples on the other hand. Every 24 hours, the two systems speak to each other and compare samples. If you're in that database and you've left your DNA at any crime scene, you will be matched to it.
And is there any links between it and any other scenes?
There has not been a CODIS hit as of yet. Which begs the question, does someone do this and just stop? Michelle Maynard is the woman Donna Jean was babysitting for the night she was murdered. One of the last people to see Donna Jean alive. Michelle disappeared for 6 days immediately after Donna Jean's murder.
6 days, you just kind of go underground. That seems very odd to me.
I think she would be hiding out if it was somebody she knew that did it.
If this murder had happened to an acquaintance of yours, wouldn't you be just there with open arms?
Who was this man she met at a local bar? What does he know? Why has he never come forward? Police went out and they canvassed the bars that the two had been at. They developed a description that enabled this composite drawing. The Mystery Man, as police and the media dubbed him. This was disseminated nationally. Numerous tips were received, all were checked out. Who was this man that drove Michelle home? The Mystery Man. A lot of things have been tried with this case and failed. So, where do we go from here? Auntie?
I'm going to track down Michelle. Hopefully some more information that we can dig up here.
Because I think she needs to be spoken to, no question. Why doesn't somebody start by looking at the correlation between all of the things we have going on in this case, and how often does this come up?
Yeah, I hear correlation, I hear data. I can do this.
Daniel.
I can look at the different virtual communities, different portals, see if there's any chat out there about Donna's murder.
I would be really interested in talking to those two boys, the ones that found Donna's body.
They were interviewed thoroughly and ruled out by DNA.
I think they may know more.
How did the boys know to find Donna Jean's body where it was? Everyone here knows what's expected of them. Let's start thawing this case out. Let's go.
Give it our best shot.
It's mind-boggling and incredibly frustrating to think that an innocent girl, 17 years old, was abducted in plain view of dozens of balconies, so close to her own home.
There's not a lot to go on. It just seems really skinny.
This man of mystery, who is that? The woman that Donna Jean was babysitting for. What happened to her? How is it that in that short span from door to door, she disappears? The squad of civilian subject matter experts and I are examining with fresh eyes the 30-year-old murder of Jean Alcock. I've tasked Monty with locating Michelle Maynard, the woman for whom Donna Jean was babysitting the night she was murdered. Michelle returned to her apartment that night with a man known only as the Mystery Man, a man who's never been located, never been even identified. In order to find him today, 30 years later, we first need to find Michelle Maynard.
There's some things that don't add up to me with Michelle Maynard. I found it very odd that police couldn't find her for 6 days after the murder.
They still don't know exactly what she told them, but she had plenty of time to rehearse the story.
Wouldn't you want to try and help? I'm looking for a missing person. Her name's Michelle Maynard. Maybe you can help me out. Does it look familiar at all?
I haven't seen him.
No. There's lots of different ways to find people. Like, the very first thing I do is pick up a phone book, see if there's a name and an address. You can Google them. Then you go onto Facebook. Go to places wherever people meet and talk.
She looks familiar, but... Yeah. Check around there, like the meth clinic, the coffee house.
I haven't found her yet, but I'm close.
I'm calling Todd. He's one of the boys that found Donna's body. He was also an ex-boyfriend of hers. Even though he was excluded by police DNA, the family still thinks that he found the body too quickly. They think he knew where to look. Can you tell me what happened that day that you found Donna?
I had a roommate at the time. He had a dog, and we had the dog with us. So just kind of walked around there, and everything just seemed ordinary. You know what I mean? Like headed towards the cornfield. Walked over to the gravel pit. Then we headed towards a dead-end road, and the end of that road goes to a path that leads up to Fanshawe Dam. When we left there, then that's when the dog started acting a little weird. Started whining and pulling at its chain and kind of running back and forth and stuff. I was on the riverside. We seen what looked like a body. I just stopped right there as soon as I seen what, I didn't know for sure it was Donna because I think from where I was, she was face down. You wouldn't know that was a dead-end road if you weren't from the area. You wouldn't know that it was that secluded. It had to be somebody with a car. I honestly believe it was somebody that had to know the area.
Todd and his friend found the body quickly because they had a dog. His insight that he thought it was someone local is useful information that we need to verify. And once we do that, it may lead us to our killer.
What we're looking at here are two possible scenarios. Two circles, if you will. An inner circle, or family, friends, neighbors, immediate acquaintances, and then an outer circle, a stranger.
I presume the mystery man from the bar would fit into the outer circle then.
Right. A drifter, a transient, some kind of external predator. Assessing the scene environmentally, we'll get a better sense of which of the two circles is more likely. We don't know which route Donna took to the convenience store on the night she was killed, so we're headed to the apartment block where she babysat to see if we can find the most logical one. Wally, how's it going?
Good.
Tammy Sussman Wally's here with us this morning. He's basically our guide on the ground. What kind of lighting in the parking lot at the time?
There was no lights outside at all.
At all?
Period, no. Nobody heard nothing, nobody saw nothing. It's almost like...
vanished?
Yeah.
It's pretty freaky to be walking down the same hallway Donna might have walked down the night she died.
Okay, this is the apartment she was babysitting in. And she would have come out this door and went down the stairs to leave.
So she didn't need to walk past any other apartments on this floor?
Yeah, the next nearest exit is way down the hall.
She leaves this apartment, make a straight shot out to this stairwell here, descend the stairs, and the exit is right at the bottom of the stairwell.
Yes, this is clearly the path of least resistance.
But there's no reason for her to interact with anyone in the building or pass anyone in the building unless they're in the stairwell.
It's one thing to see this complex on a map, make some measurements. It's quite another to visit the site, stand outside the very door where she left.
She would have started over here.
My guess is that the suspect watched Donna come out of the apartment, go to the store. We know she made it to the store. That then provided him with her path of approach that he could then expect her to follow when she returned, and that's when he attacked.
Taking the route we identified, I'm going to take some measurements and pinpoint the distance between the apartment and the convenience store. I want to plot the distance against a database of similar abductions, breaking them down into abductions by family members, abductions by acquaintances, and abductions by total strangers, and we'll then see into which category Donna best fits.
Take it right to the door.
It's 108.3 meters. The best conceivable outcome of this mapping effort is that it helps us to catch a killer.
I've been trying to track down Michelle Maynard, the woman that Donna was babysitting for the night she was killed, and finally, I found her. Yeah, Mike, Monty, how are you? I spoke to Michelle. Yeah. She's willing to meet with you. I'll tell her.
Finally, we've got something. I can't wait to speak with this Michelle. Find out why it is she went missing for 6 days after the killing. What we need are some new clues about what happened that night. The civilian squad and I are examining the 30-year-old murder of Donna Jean Alcock in London, Ontario. By drawing on experience from their personal and professional lives, the team is bringing fresh eyes to this case. Monty has successfully located Michelle Maynard, the woman for whom Donna Jean was babysitting the night she was murdered. I now need to meet with Michelle and find out what she might remember, and more importantly, what she may have not told people over the years when it comes to this case. Take us through that night.
I was going to the bar, so she went to babysit for me, and this total stranger was sitting with my friends, offered me a ride home.
Did you assist the police in creating that composite drawing? There was a composite release.
Yes, I did, but I guess that was no help.
Did he say where he was from?
No, I don't think so. No. You know, we got the pizza. I was eating some of it on the way home.
How much pizza was left in the box?
Maybe four slices or something after we got done eating.
In this particular case, we see some obvious examples of selective memory. She remembers there was 4 pieces of pizza left in the box, but she doesn't remember what she did in that hour that Donna Jean went missing.
We were out of cigarettes, so I said to Donna, would you go to the store and get us some cigarettes? Never thought nothing. She never came back.
How long after Donna Jean disappeared did you give a statement to the police?
That same day after I found out that she didn't come home.
And did they ever touch base with you after that for further details?
Not that I recall, no. Because I was shortly after that, I left the neighborhood.
How long after?
Maybe a month, or maybe a couple weeks. Something like that.
Maybe a week?
I think I was on the verge of going before this all happened anyway.
Once again, she seems selectively forgetful about when and why she left the area after Donna Jean's murder. This makes me wonder if she's holding something back intentionally.
With the use of the composite sketch, I'm trying to find anybody who may know or recognize this mystery man that Michelle left with on that night. Why hasn't he come forward if he's got nothing to hide? Know of anyone that would be here right now that might have still comes here that would have been around? Regulars are looking at composite sketch, and we'll see where it goes. Maybe you can help me out. You've been coming here a long time? I've had zero luck trying to track down the mystery man. Not surprising. It has been 30 years.
I've had Peter conduct various research to get a sense of the statistical likelihood of someone being kidnapped by an absolute stranger. I want him to then compare those figures to the data that we were able to gather at the scene of where Donna Jean was kidnapped. Did Donna Jean encounter someone known to her, or was this an attack by a random stranger?
Let's have a look here on the smart board. We have an overview. Statistics relating to the sexual assault and murder of Donna. Homicide following abduction is extremely rare. Only 0.4% of these abductions end in murder.
I mean, that's negligible, right?
It is.
Less than 1/2%.
Right. Only approximately 10% of victims taken from their home or around their home, about 100 meters radius, are taken by a complete stranger.
These sound like the 2 least probable scenarios statistically. Stranger abduction at or near the home, and an abduction period that ends in homicide. So combined then, what does the data tell you?
It's more likely than not that Donna was abducted, sexually assaulted,
and murdered by someone known to her.
As a media strategist, I'm reviewing newspapers, online materials, forums to find any connection to Donna Jean's case, to see if there were ever low-life criminals living in the area at the time of Donna's murders that we should be checking into. This cannot be a coincidence. I really think I'm onto something.
Okay, Daniel, what have you got?
So I went through the news footage, archival research, online, and I found something quite bone-chilling. There was an escaped convicted sex killer who was living in London when Donna went missing. He was convicted in the 1976 sexting of a 15-year-old and again in 1978 of a 16-year-old. He was living not only in London at the time, but around the same apartment that Michelle Maynard lived in.
To me, it's remarkable that he lived around the same apartment complex where Donna was the night she was murdered.
Was he linked to her? Did he murder her?
This is like lightning striking twice in the same place. It merits looking into full bore. That is remarkable.
He went by the alias name of Joseph James Tripp, and his real name, Joe Shepard.
We have what we call the +1 rule. Where there's one sex killer lurking, there's usually one or more alongside them. And if he's running with crew in the area, we have to wonder what influence he could have imparted on them. I'm very curious to see who was in his inner circle. That even if they didn't know he was Joe Shepard and what he had done, would have still been impressed by this sort of criminal experience that he offered.
These sexual deviants, predators, I can see now with the internet that back in the day, it's not something you would just chat with someone. I wonder how they networked.
This has been the question for years. How did Bernardo and Homolka find each other by chance? Could all these lives have been saved? So, look deeper into this Joe Shepard guy. I want to know exactly if he's been interviewed about this case or other local unsolved cases. These guys don't just stop. I need to go back to the family and see what exactly they know about this Shepard connection. So our investigation so far has revealed a few points of interest that I need to ask you some clarifying questions about. A Joseph Shepard, or Joe Shepard.
Yes.
What was your knowledge of him?
That same night that Donna was murdered, Joe Shepard and Michael Maynard were all drinking together on Joe Shepard's balcony.
The woman for whom Donna Jean was babysitting the night she was murdered, Michelle.
Yes.
She had a brother.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
So Joe Shepard and Mike Maynard knew each other.
Yes.
Yes. He just hung around there because his sister lived there.
So he was routinely in the complex.
Yes. He had said to one of my cousins, it was a couple days before Donna was murdered, he said, someday I'm going to have my way with her.
Her is?
Donna Jean.
I learned a number of important things. The affiliation between Michael Maynard and Joe Shepard, who were associating the night of Donna Jean's disappearance. What's also remarkable is the disclosure that Michael Maynard had made statements in the days leading to Donna Jean's murder that he was going to have his way with her.
Hi, you've reached Renee's cell phone. I can't take your call right now, but please leave a message and I'll call you right back.
Renee, I need you to look into Michael Maynard. We either need to rule him out or elevate him to person of interest, the same as Joe Shepard. If you could get on that as soon as you can and get back to me, I'd appreciate it.
It was very difficult to get any information about Michael Maynard, either in print or online. I'm still checking to see whether Michael's DNA was compared against that of Donna's killer. I did find an obituary, however, that was printed in the London Free Press in 2001. The only information about his cause of death was that he died suddenly, so any information he may have had about Donna's murder has died with him.
Hi, Mike. It's Antonella here. As I was going through the files, I came across a name that I've never heard before in association to this case. Her name is Joanne, and I think she's somebody we need to speak to. She She was at the bar the same time that Michelle was there with the mystery man.
Hi, Joanne. Hi. It's Mike. We spoke on the phone.
Yes.
You were there that night at the Town and Country, correct?
Yes. There were 5 or 6 of us sitting at the table. The guy in question, now he was sitting at our table, but I don't ever remember hearing his name, or he seemed like a nice enough guy, like he was friendly.
Nothing weird about him?
No, not at all.
Take me through Michelle's interaction with this guy.
She was pretty drunk.
Joanne to me seems credible. She has a very clear and independent recollection of the events that night. Michelle left with this guy. The press called him the mystery man. This is the opposite drawing.
That's what he came up with between mine and hers. Put the 2 of them together and come up with this.
So this is basically a combination of what you remembered and what Michelle remembered?
Yeah. What I was seeing in my head,
right.
He couldn't put it down on paper.
This is a great sketch, but it doesn't sound like it's the mystery man. This is a combination of 2, maybe 3 different people. I'm going back to talk with Michelle Maynard to see what she has to say about her brother's involvement with Joe Shepard. Last time I saw her, I felt she was holding back. Maybe this time, she'll come clean. Did your brother Mike ever express an interest to you in any of the Alcott girls?
No.
On that night, did you see your brother Mike anywhere around the apartment complex?
No.
Joe Tripp, whose real name was Joe Shepard, was an escaped sex killer from the United States, from Tennessee.
Oh my God.
He was a priority in the United States, and he was living across from you.
Oh my God. No, I did not know that.
And Mike never brought up the name.
No.
I have no doubts that Michelle has carried this case with her over the years. But I also have no doubts that she and her brother Mike had detailed conversations about Donna Jean's murder up to the time of his death. The question that remains is whether or not Michelle has convinced herself that a certain series of events occurred that night as a matter of selective memory, or because she's decided to be deliberately misleading. To answer that question, I need her to take a polygraph exam, a lie detector test. If we provided you the opportunity of a polygraph with a private examiner,
I would take it.
in trying to track down the killer of Donna Jean Alcock, the squad and I have come to the conclusion there was most likely someone local. Michael Maynard was someone local at the time and is a possible suspect. I've asked his sister Michelle to undergo a polygraph test. You understand why you're here today?
Yes, I do.
To confirm whether or not she's been protecting him all these years.
This goes above your heart.
Donald Connor, he's a very well-respected and experienced polygraph examiner. What he's going to tell me, he can take that to the bank.
Please remain still. The test is about to begin.
It's not completely foolproof, but it will provide us with some insight into what she really knows and point us in the right direction and where to go from here. Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
She seems to have highly selective memories of specific events. Do you think maybe where she's unclear on things, she's just making stuff up?
The two issues that we explored was, did she know for sure who committed the murder?
Right.
If someone had told her, confessed to her in the last 30 years. And she said no to that question, she was telling the truth. And also, an issue was she withholding any information. And she passed that question also. She's not withholding any information.
On the key issues, you're satisfied?
She's been truthful, yeah.
Thank you very much.
No problem. I hope you get the person responsible.
For 30 years, people have speculated that Michelle had something to do with what happened to Donna Jean that night. The tests confirm that's not the case.
I also found out that the police tested Michael's DNA, and it was not a match for Donna's killer.
From here on in, I start looking at who else in that housing complex, in that neighborhood, who may have known Donna Jean was responsible for her murder.
I've been looking into Joe Shepard, who was living around the same apartment complex as Michelle Maynard and Donna Jean when she was murdered. I got the information on Joe Shepard. In 1988, the police captured him and extradited him back to Tennessee. In 1995, the police investigated Shepherd as a suspect in Donna's murder, ran his blood sample against her DNA from her recovered body, and then he was excluded as a suspect. And he actually passed away in 2010 in prison. Shepherd seemed like a perfect match, a convicted sex killer in the area that night.
It's important to investigate each lead thoroughly, to not jump to conclusions, to not get boxed into a specific theory. Joe Shepherd looked like a strong suspect, but in the end, he's excluded by DNA. We're really struggling with this case now. All of our leads have come to nothing so far. Donna's case is so random, so apparently isolated. We're dealing with someone familiar with the area, who resided in the area and knew its layout, knew the dump site, knew who Donna was. Hello? Just when I thought we had run out of steam, I get a call from someone who found out what we were doing here, has some information they want to bring to us, and they want to talk.
Between the ages of 17 and 18, walking into a home and hearing men in the living room when he's talking about things he had done to girls.
How many people would have been in the room?
There was 6, 7 guys.
There's 4 reasons why people offer themselves up as sources. I use the acronym MICE: money, ideology, coercion, or ego. In this case, she's doing this because she believes it's the right thing. It's an ideology. And that is the most credible reason a source comes forward and why we need to listen to her.
I remember them talking about Donna and the apartment building on...
They mentioned the apartments. Is there any statement he made to implicate himself?
I remember them talking about the car that he was driving. He had to get painted that night. His name was...
Said this.
Yes. He was laughing about the things he did. And then I wanted to leave because I got really scared, and his wife didn't want me to leave right away because I looked scared. And she just wanted me to calm down before I left.
So he's talking about what happened to Donna. He's using the first person I. He mentions a garbage bag. He mentions a car that then gets repainted that night. This source to me seems very credible. She has a very clear and independent recollection, and I sense genuine fear on her behalf. She also mentioned an ex of hers, who has his own independent recollection of these same events, but for whatever reason, he's chosen to keep it a secret. When your ex would break down and cry, what would he say to you?
That he was scared, that he knew that it was... that I better not ever say anything.
So someone has independently verified what you remember?
Absolutely.
This is remarkable new information. We need to find out what his connection was to Donna Jean, if he knew her, where he lived then, and where he lives now. I'm really wondering if he was also part of Joe Shepherd's inner circle. As a cop, you learn to acquaint yourself pretty quick with the +1 rule. Where there's one, others will follow. Could be a weapon, could be a suspect. Where there's one sex killer, there's usually one or more alongside them. I'm wondering if he was the +1. Breaking developments. I've been approached by an anonymous source. She has detailed information with respect to statements made by a man in the years following Donna Jean's murder. So Monty, when I give you his name, I need you to find out A, if he's still alive, B, if he is, where he is. Renee, I need you to look into his criminal background. See what you can find in the archives with respect to other convictions. See if they fit within the framework of Donna Jean's murder. Time is of the essence. Let's go.
Do you know by chance where he lived? What I gotta do now is find this person of interest. I got a lot of contacts in London. I got his name, and I know when he left. DC, huh?
There isn't anything just with his first and last name, but I'll try a couple different variations.
I'm just gonna have to go through maybe some other friends' connections and see whether or not anything is relevant.
It helps to have something really to pull you in a direction that you feel is making progress.
We could be hot on the trail right now. Potentially, this could lead us somewhere.
While the rest of the squad firms up our suspect's connection to Donna Jean Alcock, I'm going back to Joanne, the woman who saw Michelle leave with the mystery man the night Donna Jean was killed. It's my thought that if we can redo the composite drawing using modern technologies and get an accurate picture of this guy, that the police can track him down. So this blank face matches more or less the existing composite's head shape.
The chin is way off.
The chin is way off, so you remember that.
It's more of a wider chin.
refining this composite drawing 30 years later using new technology. It's developed by a former LAPD and Baltimore police sketch artist. I want to use the original drawing as a referent and then just enhance it. Anything distinct? Bad teeth, good teeth, big lips, small lips.
That's not as thin as that.
How are you with the hairline?
Yeah, that's good. He had a bit of sideburns too, though.
This is a person of interest. You don't know who he is or what value he holds in the investigation. You just know you need to find him. We are at the end. As you know, a tip was received suggesting that a man who lived nearby in the years after Donna Jean's murder was boasting about his involvement. He frequented that apartment complex. He had associates in Michelle's building. The question is, where is he now?
I found him.
Of course.
He's in plain sight, in his own name.
What do we know, Renee, about his criminal history?
Well, his last contact with the judicial system was when he was acquitted in the case of a rape of a 14-year-old girl. And based on where he was living in East London at that time, he would likely have very intimate knowledge of the dump site.
This guy lived in the area at the time of Donna Jean's murder. He had associates in Donna Jean's building. He had knowledge of and access to the dump site nearby. He was actually boasting about his being responsible for Donna Jean's murder in the years after her death, and he was arrested for the sexual assault of another teenage girl in subsequent years, acquitted, and then went in the wind. You add it all up, and it speaks for itself. I feel we are closer now than ever. People are aware, as a result of your efforts, what we're doing, and are coming out of the woodwork. This case is being worked, and worked hard by the police. But trust me, you've done your job here. And that's what I'm going to tell Donna Jean's family. The squad can take this case no further, and the police have received our research and analysis. If I can turn your mind back to when we first started this, and one of the first questions I asked all of you was, what do you think happened? And you said you had no idea, other than it was your lingering suspicion that someone in Michelle's family was somehow involved, or covering for somebody. And we had her take a polygraph examination. And the results indicate she's being truthful.
What?
She lied.
What? No, she didn't.
Apparently she never did. Those questions include her covering for our brother Mike that have been cleared on DNA. I interviewed Michelle at length. There is one thing that she was never fully truthful about, and that is the description of the man she went home with that night. There was another witness who had a very clear recollection and provided a very good description of this mystery man, as he was known. So we made a new sketch of what he actually looked like using state-of-the-art technology.
So he looks like.
You remember what he looks like?
Yeah, he looks just like that. Did. Now he's bald, I believe.
Or if she took out my guy from the neighborhood. Either way, this is the missing link. Even without the digital age enhancement complete, Laura thinks she recognizes this revised composite as a guy who was hanging around the complex at the time of Donna Jean's murder. Who knows what other new tips will come in? We're going to immediately pass this information on to the police. We also know that a viable suspect, as a result of recent tips, is...
She knew him.
We also know that this person isn't in the DNA databank for offenders, meaning that they have not been, since the late 90s, either in prison or convicted of a violent crime.
I'm angry. Confused a bit.
I just want this person caught. I want him to look in my eye so you can see what he's done to me and my family, my dad.
There's been a changing of the guard with the OPP. There's more momentum on this case probably than ever. And Donna Jean's killer running out of places to hide.
Like, thank God for you.
It's a start.
Well, I'm gonna make a bunch of copies of this, and I'm gonna plaster it everywhere.
A tip will solve this case.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.